All right. This Barbie podcast. I'm so glad to be joined by comedian extraordinaire Kate Willet and one of my favorite podcasters, Leslie Lee III of Struggle Session Podcast. Welcome both to Bad Faith.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I finally did it last night. I went to a drive-in movie theater in Cape Cod to watch a double screening of both the Barbie movie and Legally Blonde, which created an interesting pairing that maybe we'll get into later in the show. And I have thoughts, feelings, and opinions. I wanted to talk to both of you about this movie. And I want to set it up by asking this first. I'm gonna go to you, Kate. What do you think this movie was trying to accomplish? And did it do so successfully?
I mean, I think it was trying to accomplish advertising a toy. And yeah, I think it did so successfully. Yeah.
What about you, Leslie?
I think the same. It was trying to accomplish the same thing. It was an advertisement for a toy. It was not a story even about the character Barbie. It was literally like an ad for Mattel. It was like trying to make us think that Mattel is a good thing and addressing all of Mattel's haters. And I do not think it was successful because I think people on the whole would probably prefer just a movie about Barbie. That's actually about Barbie, the character that they imagine that this person is, Barbie, as opposed to like the literal toy. It would be like if the Transformers movies, right? Mm-hmm. They're not about toy Transformers. They're about the Transformers in the real world. Now, say what you will about the quality of those films. At least they're taking the topic seriously. It almost seems like a little bit like sexist that when it comes to the women for the toy that's supposed to be for girls, they like take it so literal. Like, oh, girls aren't going to be able to understand like a story about Barbie. They think Barbie is just plastic. They don't have these fantasies about Barbie. It's a very strange choice to make, which I don't think any every movie is advertisement for a product at this point, but I don't think any movie has taken this such a literal tact with it.
So it was like go ahead, Kate, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, to me, like, I think that, there's a calculation that, like, consumers are too smart for a straightforward movie about Barbie, which is like a toy with a ton of baggage, about like, being, like body, like making people, have eating disorders and, being like just basically super sexist and also racist. And so I think they decided to like hire this, indie feminist director and be like, look, like we know this, like we're aware, basically kind of anticipate the criticism and make people feel like they were part of it to, in the end, sell the toy again.
I think you both hit on that fundamental insecurity that I think in some ways ruined what could have been a more successful effort, which is that the filmmakers didn't quite know what to do with the fact that the toy that they are supposed to be writing about ostensibly positively is problematic. And they felt the need to address it, perhaps, as you say, Kate, anticipating the criticisms, at the same time that they're unwilling to let go of the toy as a fundamentally positive thing. And it feels like they're almost embarrassed to enjoy the film, so much so, or enjoy what Barbies do for girls, why Barbies enjoy girls, admitting that that the physical attraction is part of the appeal of the Barbie, so much so that they immediately take a Barbie in a magical world with a sunny disposition and all of the idealism that's wrapped up in the toy. And within the first 10 minutes of the movie, make her not a Barbie anymore.
Yes,
yeah.
You get the inciting incident of this film, and I cannot believe this, and I actually want to push back on the idea that Greta Gerwig is in any way a feminist. Like, I don't think her and Noah Baumbach they're not even close enough to normal people to understand such a concept. Like, we can maybe get into how fucking weird they are. They are weirdos and they are not good writers. I would just want to say that that's the main takeaway I want. They are just not good enough for us to have too much discourse about. But the first thing we see Barbie do is pretend to eat. Mm-hmm. This is a movie that little girls are going to see. And so if they want to be the perfect person, the first thing they learn, and I do want people who may not have seen the movie may think, oh, there's some immediate like pushback on it. There is not. There is not. It's the first thing you see. And then later on, the inciting incident of the movie is that Barbie gets cellulite.
Yeah.
She has to go to the real world because she wants to die because she started to get cellulite.
Well, Leslie, wait. She definitely gets cellulite. She definitely wants to die. I don't know if the movie says she wants to die, like that her thoughts of death are related directly to her having gotten cellulite.
Explain that to a 5-year-old. How can a 5-year-old, and 5-year-olds are going to see this movie. It's so strange because it's not for kids, like at all, not even a little bit. It's like straight up like an adult, like parody almost of like, and it's very, and most of the jokes, they're not, the double entendre jokes are just like, obvious sex jokes that are not like the Scooby-Doo movie, for example, has a lot of in-jokes that a kid might not pick up on about smoking weed, about sex, but they're subtle. They try to be subtle about it. And that's a movie written by James Gunn, probably the least subtle comedy writer that there is. And Barbie is like so like just in your face with the double entendre, and it just seems a lot of the script just seems lazy and not really well written. The dialogue isn't that good. It's a mess of a movie. It's an entire mess of a movie.
Did you also, Kate, have an issue with the kind of tonal awkwardness here? Like, do you have a sense of, because this is one of Ben Shapiro's big criticisms. For those of you who don't know, Ben Shapiro's now done about 3 hours of content total criticizing this movie. I gotta say, I did not expect to agree with him as much as I frankly did, but that was one of the criticisms that he raised, that this is fundamentally not a movie for mothers and daughters, even though it was sort of marketed that way.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I can't imagine what it would be like to see this with a child and what they would pick up about it or not. Like, to me, honestly, my biggest takeaway from the movie was like, wow, this feels like being on a massive dose of psychedelics. And I don't know, like, yeah, I literally have no idea what a child would take away from that. Like, my guess is if the kid was young, they probably wouldn't get a lot of the jokes.
Like the beaching joke. Like, so for example, for those who haven't seen it yet, I mean, also there's going to be major spoilers ahead if you haven't seen it, so gird yourself.
Oh, but the scene actually, I think most people have seen because they like advertise it. This is like the first scene they put out for people to see.
The beaching scene
yes.
that we're talking about?
Beach, yeah, that was in the trailer. Yeah.
Right. So the Kens are all standing around. Their job is beach. And at a certain point, they're kind of jockeying back and forth with each other, saying that, like, I can beat you. We can beat each other off. We're going to have a beach off. Obvious implications there. I guess with that sort of a joke, that wasn't even my biggest issue with it. My tonal issues were less that it wasn't made for kids, because I don't have kids and I don't really care if it was made for kids. And if someone brings their kids to a movie that's rated PG-13 and is offended, that feels like choices that are being made. But as an adult, I felt that the tone was off. And part of the reason was, and this really was clarified for me having watched this with Legally Blonde as a double feature. Legally Blonde is a movie that came out like 20 years ago. It managed to be a better Barbie movie than the Barbie movie, because Legally Blonde lets the so-called kind of airheaded bimbo-y blonde California character move through the world as a pink-loving girly girl, loves to get her nails done, loves fashion major at a fake USC school. Lets her be that person. And simultaneously, without actually changing and being largely oblivious to the way that she's coming off to other people, move through the world successfully and achieve a great deal. And I think that we could have had a very different movie where if Barbie, being Barbie, happy, oblivious, powerful, confident, smart, an astronaut, whatever, gets into the real world and defies people's expectations of what she can be because she's tall and blonde and beautiful or whatever.
Yeah.
That could have been fun. Like, oh, like fish out of water. But instead, she immediately was like, hi, this Barbie is depressed. This party has anxiety. This party is as sad that people are shouting sexism at her from the construction site.
Yeah, there's so many strange choices, but that is the first one. You assume that, okay, a movie about Barbie coming in the real world, right? The movie would be about Barbie. She comes in, she's all light and love. She's kind of oblivious to the bad things going on. Maybe she has some low moments when she sees the sexism in the real world, but she she overcomes that and helps everyone in the real world become better people.
Yeah.
That's generally the movie, like, we've seen this movie 100 times. Encino Man, Blast from the Past. There's just tons and tons of movies like this, and there's a reason why that story works. This movie is like a weird, inversion of it, because when she comes to the real world, what actually happens is that Barbieland gets destroyed because Ken comes back after learning about patriarchy, which he mostly thinks is about horses, which I also think that maybe Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig think, because they don't really enunciate a lot of or almost any of the problems about patriarchy except for men are in charge. That's basically seems to be their understanding of patriarchy. But it's like a weird inversion, and really the fundamental issue, I think, with the themes of this movie is that the movie is not about Barbie. Ken is the protagonist of the movie. He's the one who wants to go on the adventure. He's the one who wants to discover himself. He in the first place, and ends up discovering himself. He literally discovers himself by the end. That's like the climax of the movie. He has an antagonist. Barbie doesn't have an antagonist, except kind of Ken. But Ken has another Ken that he's Ryan Gosling's Ken, I should say, for the listeners. And is his name Simu Liu?
Simu Liu. Yeah.
Simu Liu is like Ryan Gosling's Ken's antagonist, and they have a big climactic fight while Ryan Gosling is also doing a singing and dance number. It's like a 6-minute sequence, which is the high point of the movie and the climax of the film, and it's all about Ken. And the Barbies are just, and after that happens, there's a little aside where the Barbies get their little victory, but they're all off screen at the time. This movie feels like if you chopped off the extra 30 minutes of weird, unnecessary stuff, this movie is a 90-minute movie about Ken. A 90-minute funny spin. Just imagine if they put out, they're going to make a movie. Everybody talks about Barbie all the time. We're going to put a movie out about Ken and how sad he is and how overlooked he is. That is what this movie is. It has a 30 minutes of extra, really bad
to try to rehabilitate Barbie.
Yeah.
And because that's the thing. You say that, Barbie doesn't have a real villain. I think that's right. Part of the problem is that the way the movie is set up, Barbie gets to the real world and the people at Mattel, the CEO of which is Will Ferrell, have this vague desire to get her back in the box. They allude to the fact, they mention once that there will be huge problems if Barbie continues to live in the real world. They don't really elaborate. They make some joke about it. We'll have podcasters hosted by two trees. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. But they never come back to it. And eventually they seem to lose the urgency of getting Barbie back to the Barbie world. The problem is Barbie voluntarily goes back to Barbie world. They go back and forth on their own multiple times. And just outside of one chase scene where they're tracking her down and trying to get her back into a box and transport her home, he's not the bad guy. And it seems clear that why he can't be the really, really bad guy is because it's the Mattel property and he's the CEO of Mattel. So, go ahead.
And it's such a weird choice because... Oh, go ahead, Kate.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, to me, this kind of comes back to, whether this movie is feminist or not. It's certainly not feminist in a way that, my feminism looks like, or, what I think is, good politics. But I feel like feminism itself is sort of the subject of this movie. And they're kind of trying to do this ironic take on it, where there's the criticism is anticipated, right. It's baked in. They have the Indigo Girls song, which is to me that song was the early 2000s, yes, we're equal now, Jam, Lilith Fair.
Is that the song that kept singing in the car?
Yeah, Closer to Fine, yeah. And
I've never heard that song in my life.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is it is, to me, that song is just this sort of embodiment of this late 90s, early 2000s, white liberal feminism, which they are making fun of in the movie, but they're not offering an alternative. So like there's kind of the like, yes, we're in on the joke, but like what are they saying we should do instead? And to me, like even Ken, like thinking about Ken as a protagonist, like Ken as a character is written to be like what the liberal feminist person is going to imagine that like a men's rights guy is like he's harmed by patriarchy. And I do think that men are harmed by patriarchy, but that's sort of all there is to him, right? Like he's not multidimensional. He's just like, oh, like I'm trapped in sexism and this is hurting me too. And so it's like, you know, it's still that. There's not much more to it.
Even worse, it feels to me that while Barbie does not have a real antagonist, and she doesn't also have, to your point, Leslie, direction to desire and articulation of what she actually wants. At the very end of the movie, once Ken self-actualizes, a character asks Barbie, well, what do you want? Like, you are free to be what you want to be. What do you want? And she goes, I don't know. And that's supposed to be sort of empowering, that we don't have to have it all figured out, which is fine in real life, but in a movie I found to be unsatisfying. But Ken, by contrast, I think does have a strong antagonist. And her name is Barbie. I mean, what do you guys make of the way that Barbie and the Barbies in Barbieland, generally speaking, treat Ken? Because this has been a big point of contention in the social media discourse, where all the people who like the movie, and I gotta say, I did enjoy the movie. If you asked me if I liked the movie and if you should see it, I would say yes. But all the people who like didn't like the movie from political reasons, the Ben Shapiro's and all, the pushback against them has been, oh, you just don't get it. And that patriarchy hurts men too. And that the Barbies weren't really being mean to Ken. It was an allegory for how women are treated in the real world. And it's supposed to make you reflect on how far from equality we actually are. Like that has been the line. But do you think the way the movie actually read when you watched it and the way that the Barbies interacted with and treated the Kens throughout the first part of the movie into the very end where she kind of offers an apology, I mean, it felt to me like a very legitimate origin story for Ken. And apart from him being cartoonishly mean in response to the Barbies, I might have been actually rooting for him.
I mean, when I read the plot of it, it sounded like the plot of the movie was Barbie crushes a slave revolt. It's like, because the Ken is so weird. It's like, you're supposed to think it's like maybe a utopia in Barbieland, but it's absolutely not. It's so strange, the portrayal, because when you first see the Barbies, like all they do is compliment each other on how pretty they are and give each other awards for nothing, seemingly, yes. And like pretend to eat and have parties. And that's Barbieland. This is supposed to be some ideal world. And I want to make it clear, they are not women. The movie makes it very clear that they are not human beings. Ken is not a man, Barbie isn't a woman, so that even further complicates any gender thing that they're doing, because they're not actual people. They're not human beings. They're like some other, they're literally dolls. And so when the Kens are at the beginning of the film, like, you really do feel sorry for Ken, especially Ryan Gosling's Ken, because Barbie is so mean to him and shitty to him. And that works if the movie is called Ken. But in the movie called Barbie, it doesn't really make you like Barbie. It makes you just feel like Barbie is just really kind of mean person to Ken. And you kind of feel for him a little bit.
Just in case people haven't seen it and are listening to this, let's point out that when we say Barbie is mean to Ken, the movie sets Ken up by saying it's Barbie and Ken. There's no Ken without Barbie, and that Ken was designed. A Vox article framed this as a kind of reverse Adam and Eve origin garden story, where Barbie is created, and then more as an afterthought, Ken is created to complement her. And so he has no real purpose without her. And the Helen Mirren voiceover at the beginning tells us that Ken only has a good day if Barbie notices him. So his existential condition, the condition of his existence, is that he only matters if Barbie cares about him. And the movie then goes on to set up that Barbie does not care about him. The movie seems to treat the idea that Barbie could have a romantic interest or even a kind of friendship interest in a man as something that would take away from Barbie. And so I don't want to sound like Ben Shapiro, but I did start to kind of feel like, what if I do like what if I do like boys or another girl in the movie? Like, what if I have romantic interest? Is it anti-feminist to have a crush?
Oh, I do. Before I forget, I do want to mention, not a single LGBTQ person in this frame of this movie, from what I could tell, which I found very, very strange that even the Barbies all hate the Kens, but they're all just really good friends with one another.
Right.
Like, it's just like they're not like, obviously they're not going to have sex in the movie or anything like that, and they make a point to tell us that they do not have genitals, which was also kind of weird. But
not having genitals never kept my Barbies from having sex.
Yeah, exactly.
Mine were like having threesomes. They were like doing pornography. Yeah.
And those are the type of jokes you would expect to make in like an adult comedy about Barbie, which just mostly is. But man, when the Kens do take over, it's so funny because the Barbies like just call each other pretty and do dance offs and stuff, right? But when the Kens take over, they do a lot of goofy, like, man cave shit, right? But also there's this weird montage where the Barbies, like, manipulate them while all the men are opining about, like, the things that they care about. And it is silly stuff that people make fun of. Like, one Ken is, like, a film bro, and he talks about The Godfather and stuff. And some are tech bros, and they are explaining technology. And it's like, this is the only time that any of the Barbie or Kens talk about anything of substance. So it's a strange thing. It's like when you present the utopia, they're just like kind of airheads, all of them, Barbie and Kens. But when the Kens like take over, I don't know. It just seemed like a very strange choice because the life of the Barbie does not seem like a utopia in any way. They just kind of like hand each other awards and that's it, and call each other pretty.
Kate, look back. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do think that we're supposed to read Alan as queer.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think that, but you're right. It's not explicit, but I think that that's the idea, is that Alan is, queer in some way, gender nonconforming, or maybe.
And there's a trans actress in the movie.
Yeah. And I also think that Weird Barbie is lesbian coded, But
that's the thing. Like, we know Catherine McKinnon is lesbian.
Yeah.
And she's got short hair, I guess. Like, but it's like, it's not, there's nothing in it. Like, take the sexuality aspect of it. One of the funny things about Weird Barbie's the Barbie that you play too hard with, and her hair is cut off, and she's got a marker on her face, and her legs are akimbo, which is like most Barbies, to be honest. It's a little weird that there's only one Weird Barbie, but never mind. Yeah. And part of what's so funny, what's hysterical about the way kids treat Barbies is that they are like so sexual. Like, they're big, knockered, itty-bitty waisted, long-haired creatures that end up naked half the time, because that's the nature of how kids play with toys, with their legs spread wide open. Right? Yeah. Like that. You walk into a room where Barbies have been playing. Yes, you walk in. It's not that the kids are necessarily doing anything sexual with the Barbie, but like, you walk into a room of Barbies and you're going to find Barbies with legs akimbo, naked as the day they were born.
Yeah.
As the day they were molded. And so here's Kate McKinnon, who's like an extremely famous queer celebrity, in this role that's kind of queer coded with her legs akimbo. And there's like, they'll give us a beaching joke, but not a little like,
oh yeah,
there is joke. Like
there is a little bit of like homoeroticism from the kid, but a lot less than they seem to advertise. Like, it felt like some scenes were like kind of cut or really short in the movie that I saw in like the previews and the trailers. But yeah, it's a strange thing. And like, the Weird Barbie thing is extreme. If I was like a parent, I would have taken my child out of the theater, because they keep insisting on calling her, she's weird, she's fucked up, she's wrong. Like, this movie tells you that being different is bad. It's horrible, at least for the early part of the movie. And it's like, they really go hard on it, like more than you would expect. Like, if the Barbies are so great and perfect, why do they have an outcast in their utopia that they treat like shit? As they treat her kind of worse than the Kens, because at least they don't always make fun of the Kens. They're always making fun of the quote unquote weird Barbie, which would be the majority of the Barbies that you would see. Like, for people who didn't see it, it is established that, and it's part of the Poseidon incident, that playing with Barbie dolls in the real world affects how the Barbie dolls exist in that world, but they only use it exactly twice,
right,
with two specific Barbies. Main Barbie, who is called inexplicably stereotypical Barbie, not basic Barbie, not regular Barbie, not Barbie. Stereotypical Barbie is the name of the Barbie that the children watch this movie are supposed to identify with. It's so strange. It's such a strange film, but they don't. And she has no personality, really. And that's kind of like when you say it, she says, I don't know what I want. That's the end of the movie. That's supposed to be the beginning of the movie, generally speaking, unless you have it all and you like very clearly lose it. But she has nothing going on like before like any of this happens. She's the Barbie who doesn't have anything special about her. She's not an astronaut. She's not president. She's just Barbie.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. At one point in the movie, after Barbie has her breakdown, has gone to the real world, has come back, they're like fighting the Kens unsuccessfully at first, and she's despairing. She says a line that goes, either you're brainwashed or you're weird and ugly. There's nothing in between. So she's referencing the fact that all the Barbies have been brainwashed by Kens, which is a whole other thing we should get into, inexplicably. Inexplicably, these Barbies that we've been told are powerful and wonderful and astronauts and presidents and can do anything and comprise the entire Supreme Court. One Ken goes to the real world for like a day and comes back having seen a CEO and a horse, and it manages to take over the entire universe. And all of the Barbies, they're not actively fighting and resisting throughout. They immediately just think that the patriarchy seems fun and cool. And one of the Barbies says something like, well, it's a break for my brain to just serve beer brewskis all day and not to have to think about leadership.
And it does hurt, and it hurts to say, but the Barbies do seem happier after the kingdom. If you were comparing, the actors just seem to be having a better time. Maybe it was later on in the shoot. I don't know. But they all seemed a lot genuinely happier playing these little goofy subservient roles than they did being like pretend president. It's just a strange choice to make, to leave like the most joyous, funniest part of the movie being like the parts where the Kens take over. That is like the funniest part of the movie too, as well. It's like, just a strange choice.
Kate, what do you make of the Stepford Wives Barbie sequence?
I mean, I think it was trying to be like a sort of, I mean, it was trying to be like another sort of self-conscious critique where it's like, oh, like, we have to both, kind of actually take power, but also get rid of this, false consciousness in ourselves where we buy into patriarchy and stuff. And, it's just like a little bit like the president. Okay. She wants to chill and relax. And like, then even when she goes back to being the president, like she doesn't have there's no legislative priority of Barbieland. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it sort of stops with the irony. That's as far as it goes, which maybe is all we can expect from a toy commercial. That seems fair to me, but
that's the problem. Like, Greta Gerwig clearly thought she was doing something other than a toy commercial, or at least sold it as something other than a toy commercial, sold it as something subversive, something that gets one over on the Barbie empire and on the patriarchy and on the Mattel property that she's been allowed to play with in this scenario. So to be selling it in that way and to be very self-conscious of feminism, so self-conscious of feminism that the word patriarchy has got to be said at least 45 times in this movie. If I never hear someone say the patriarchy again, I will die a happy woman. It's not because I don't think that there is a patriarchy and that it's a problem, but it was just so heavy-handed. And when you watch something like Legally Blonde, I hate to keep bringing this into it, but Legally Blonde, people undersell her, undervalue her. And she goes and she just studies hard for the LSATs, gets into Harvard. Yes, she tries to get her boyfriend back, but very quickly realizes that her boyfriend is like not actually a good guy and worth fighting for. Realizes that she can accomplish so much more than she ever dreamed possible when she raises the expectations for herself, even though society had lowered the bar for her, and lives a wonderful, successful life as a consequence without compromising a bit of her femininity or who she intrinsically wants to be. Weird in the context of Harvard law.
Yeah.
And Barbie does the exact opposite. It's a fish out of water story that I thought was going to be about Barbie in the real world and how great Barbie is. But instead, she's the fish out of water in Barbieland. And ultimately, what does it mean? This is why I opened with, what is this movie trying to say, and does it do it successfully? Because what does it mean for the Barbie movie to end with the growth of Barbie being that she is no longer Barbie? What does it mean for the Barbie franchise if winning in Barbie world means stopping being a Barbie and going to a gynecologist appointment?
Yeah, that was such a weird joke. That's just really strange.
It was I mean, I was actually shocked that the conservatives hated this movie, because you could have a very, very conservative reading of this film. Again, it's made clear that Barbie is not a woman for all this movie until the end, where she gets a vagina. That's when Barbie actually becomes a real woman. Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig do not know what they're doing. Okay, they're not smart people. They're not sophisticated people. Their friends are not sophisticated. And a lot of this movie is like them, right? Like Barbie is Greta Gerwig and Ken is Noah Baumbach.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, so you have Greta Gerwig, who is the bigger, more successful direct part of their relationship, who shines a little bit brighter, who got $100+ million to make this who got a ton of money to make this Barbie movie. And then you have Noah Baumbach, who's still kind of an indie guy and hasn't really had that mainstream breakthrough, and maybe isn't as appreciated as he feels he should be. Like, it's a very strange.
So what are some Noah Baumbach movies?
He had, what was it, the one with the memes about the divorce where
Marriage Story.
Kylo Ren was had really awful dialogue. It was like the most significant thing I think about the movie was like it made for some good gifs. Like people thought it was
Marriage Story, which I agree was overrated. White Noise, which the people who loved Don DeLillo loved, but I'm not one of those people.
Squid and the Whale is okay,
I did like the Squid and the Whale. Frances Ha, which is a collab with his wife. Obviously, yes. I guess they met there. This movie Greenberg, which I didn't know it was him, but I did like. I remember that from back in the day, 2010. And the Meyerowitz, that Meyerowitz movie with Ben Stiller. So you're right. These more indie kind of New York is a character kind of movies. Sure. As compared to Greta Gerwig, who I think I wouldn't want to overstate her success. I think her success is happening like now,
yes.
Like before, and Pretty Women was a big deal, or Little Women. Sorry.
Well, I will say it didn't happen before. It happened when she signed the contract to make this movie.
Sure.
So it was. I think that might be built into the script that they came up with, which did seem fairly slapdash, especially for the Barbie parts.
Yes. Yes, I mean, I don't want to like really be such a scold about this. And I don't want to downplay the extent to which I had fun watching many aspects of this movie. The set design was gorgeous. The costuming was amazing. I can't get Margot Robbie's first costume change out of my head, where she's wearing this little blue suit with a spiked white pan collar. Like Halloween is Screaming, Briahna, figure it out. But the conceit, I'm sorry. Just help me walk through this Ken takeover of Barbieland. I presume that Kens were in the minority because most people had like one Ken for all of their Barbies, something which the sexual dynamics of which could be explored in a really fun way, but the movie chose not to do. But in real life, you get a performative Ken. Like you need one Ken to play out the scenarios of your heterosexual dynamics with your dolls, but otherwise you don't really care to have like a Ken for every Barbie doll. So I presumed in the world of Barbie that Barbie's vastly outnumbered Kens. And that is why they have all the seats in the Supreme Court and are running everything. Because in the real world, right, why are men in charge? It has something to do with like being able to physically overpower and the threat of violence, sexual and physical. Like that's kind of the unspoken thing in the movie. Like men aren't just kind of accidentally in charge because they decided to do it. And if women had decided to be in charge, they could also be in charge. That there's like power imbalance that comes from something that's tangible, physical, material. Okay. In the Barbie world, it makes sense to me that men don't have that advantage simply because they're outnumbered. It's like Amazonia, But then when the Kens take over, they have to manipulate them out of power, even though there's fully like a vote that's happening in 2 days to keep the Constitution and not change the Supreme Court. And I would presume that Barbies could just go to the polls and outvote the Kens.
Your favorite.
Oh.
Just vote.
Am I missing something? Like, why couldn't they just vote themselves into maintaining power?
Oh, it's because of this. It's because the Barbies at the time were brainwashed, so they had to so the thing wasn't getting them to vote. It was they had to get them unbrainwashed first, because otherwise they would have voted for the Kens.
But Leslie, once they were unbrainwashed, then they went into phase 2 of their plan, where they each pretended to like the Kens.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's
problematic.
right.
I mean, it's like feminine wiles. Now we're going to seduce the men. We're all going to become succubuses. Like, we're going to seduce the men, make them think that we give them what they want, which is our attention. Which is a weird admission that, like, the Kens aren't real men. They are men that are really actually designed to be incel. Like, they're actually designed to need you. And to kind of play with the idea that, like, we're going to withhold their, like, life's blood to manipulate. Okay, like, fine, whatever. But it wasn't just that. Once they all were back in their right minds, they then went ahead and manipulated the Kens by saying that they liked them and then pretending to like a different Ken, playing on their jealousies and getting the Kens to physically fight each other. So the Kens have to be in a physical battle with each other in order for the Barbies to maintain control of their government.
Yeah, and I do want to say that's a funny sequence. It's fairly amusing, but it's from like a movie from the 90s that doesn't talk about patriarchy so much. You know, that's just that's a screwball, sex comedy, sort of thing, which would be fine and would work. But the movie also tries to have all these weird ideals and stuff, while again not really being about Barbie. And also, it's kind of strange, right? I understand why they did it. There's obviously why they did it. But why do all the Barbies and Kens look drastically different? And not like there's a version of this movie where there's like thousands of CGI Margot Robbies representing all the baseline Barbies. And then you mix it up with some of the different Barbies that they've had, and Barbie's friends who are not in, I think, mostly aren't in this movie. Like, they don't seem to, like, Barbie's friends, like, most of the diverse Barbies are just different Barbies.
Yeah,
it's even worse than that.
I don't think, right?
It's almost worse because they cast Emma McKay, who you might know from Sex Education. And Emma McKay is, like, most famous on the internet probably for looking like Margot Robbie, right? They cast her in the movie, and I read something where they said that they were going to make a joke about how much she and Margot Robbie looked alike and, like, play with this idea of clones, Barbies, and all that. But when they got Emma McKay into blonde hair and makeup, they decided they didn't look that much alike, and then they scrapped the plan, and so she's just in there as one of the extraneous Barbies. However, when I watched the movie and Emma McKay came on the screen, and the guy I watched it with, we felt the same thing. Like, immediately we go, oh my God, she looks like Margot Robbie. They should have just done the gag.
Yeah. I thought it was her for a second. I thought it was two Margot Robbies, yeah.
And you couldn't call up Samara Weaving as well, to get in on this?
Samara Weaving, which one? Is she the one from Knight's Tale?
I don't know if she's in Knight's Tale. She's in the movie where she's getting married to the rich people, Ready or Not.
Yes. That was good.
Yeah, it was good. And she looks a lot like Margot Robbie. Like, it is a little bit strange that they obviously they want to cast a bunch of hot names and different people. Like, it makes sense, but also there is a version of the movie where it's just like 100 Ryan Goslings and 100 Margot Robbies. Well, maybe 100 Margot Robbies, some of her friends, and then, like, I don't know, 20 Ryan Goslings. Like you said, like, there should be a lot more Barbies than there are Kens in this world if they're representations of real toys.
Well, Kate, you brought up this kind of white feminism point earlier when you were talking about this recurring theme where to get from the real world to Barbie world, you have to drive and rollerblade and rocket ship through a variety of very well-designed, interesting Barbie-esque landscapes. And our protagonist, ostensibly sort of in the real world, America Ferrara, and her daughter have to take this trip as, back and forth a bunch of times. And while they're in the car, this feminist, I don't know, song from the 90s, I guess. Who was it again, Kate?
It's Indigo Girls.
Indigo
and the song is closer to Fine. And they're like look, I'm not going to lie. I like the music. Like,
no shade. No shade, Kate, because guess what?
It's lesbian, like, hits from the early 2000s. Yeah.
No shade, because guess what? When the Kens take over and they start playing that Matchbox 20 song, Push, instead, that was my jam. And this is why I felt so complicated. I was like, oh, finally a song I know. Let's sing along. I love it when the Kens are taking over. So my one point was that, like, this white feminism, like, to go back to Leslie's point, it did feel like the movie was very self-consciously trying to anticipate critiques about Barbie and like physical beauty norms and all of that. And it did so in part by casting people who we all know don't look like Barbie, including like there are black Barbies and brown Barbies and all that, but they still all are in the same mold and the same shape. And they cast people in the movie that were like body diverse without a lot of explanation. They're just like, okay, we're going to like yada, yada, yada this by just casting people with different body types in the Barbie movie as though Barbie dolls look like this. And then we're also going to yada, yada, yada. We're going to take on the feminism aspect of Barbie more head on, but we're going to yada, yada, yada some of the racial politics of Barbie by just similarly casting a diverse cast, black female president, don't ask any questions, moving on. And it did feel, if I'm going to make the critique, like something I would expect of a hashtag white feminism Greta Gerwig sort of a movie.
Specifically to me, like this doesn't even feel like sort of the contemporary version of white feminism. This feels like 2013, 2014 white feminism, where like you remember
definitely.
like those days when like back on the internet, like there was just like this time where like, you know, you could just, I feel like it was the heyday of the like men don't have bad frames tweet, you know, and like just like we need to like lock up all the men, or, you know, just whatever. There was this kind of gleeful, like sort of pretend, sort of real, like just kind of openly expressing like hatred of men. I'm not gonna lie, I participated and thought it was fun, but you know,
fair.
Now that's a bit passe. Like just we're kind of like not in that cultural moment anymore. And I, you know, even with the incel conversation, this feels like it was having like the incel conversation from, I don't know, maybe whenever Greta Gerwig's like come up was, but it was very online. Like the whole kind of thing was like very 2014 Twitter to me.
Yeah, there was a lot of, it felt like dated, but to the wrong date. Like Barbie, it doesn't even acknowledge like that Barbie was in some ways like a 80s, 90s phenomenon. There's very few like references that, which I thought would have been like a layup. Like you do have the Ken rollerblading, but that's based the rollerblading outfits, but that's really just because that was a doll that they made. So like all the outfits are just pulled from actual Barbie dolls. So I can't really give them credit for that. It's the movie is just it had a real opportunity to like tell like a story about Barbie. If they're going to skip, like you said, if they're going to yada 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 all the racial politics, why do you have to spend time addressing the feminist critiques of Barbie in the film, except to make Mattel look good? Like you could just skip over like the scene, which I thought was pretty good, of like the angry golf. Oh, and she may have been a little bit queer coded, the teenage girl. She like just rips into Barbie and tells like every negative thing that people say about the Barbie product to Margot Robbie's face and destroys her. Like that's the worst experience she has in the world of men, by the way, is other women, another girl hating her. And the movie does mention that women hate women too when they're detailing all the things. That's the one thing men have in common with women, is that one thing that we can all agree on is that we all hate women. And the most dated line that I thought was in this movie, they said, because they're talking about all these careers that the Barbies had, but they also said, you know, it's okay to just want to be a mom too. In 2023, nobody can afford to just be a mom. So what are you talking about, Greta?
You're going to need Ken for that.
Yeah. You need two Kens. You need a Ken polycule if you want to be a stay-at-home Barbie. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into that a little bit, because we haven't really talked about the America Ferrera and daughter character. I think you're so right, Leslie. I had forgotten about that line, that the thing that women and men could agree about is hating women, because it wasn't like there was a follow-up, like that was complicated at all. Like that was like problematized in the context of the movie. They just let it lay.
Yeah. They just let it lay that, and that's like very near the end. And it's like, oh, this is the message little girls should have, that they are going to hate themselves and everybody hates. That's just a strange thing to put in the movie. Even if you think it's true, that's a weird thing to put towards the end of the film that's supposed to be about empowerment, I thought. Maybe like it doesn't feel like a very empowering movie in any way, shape, or form. Like it's just, I don't know.
So Kate, so what did you make of the little girl character? So America Ferrera has a daughter who plays with Barbie doll, or did when she was a smaller child. And we believe for the beginning of the movie that the reason that our protagonist Barbie, stereotypical Barbie, has gone awry is because of sadness from this little girl. And then we realize in the real world that it's in fact America Ferrera, the mom, who has dug the Barbie back out to work out some of her complex feelings of being an adult and struggling and fear of death or whatever. And that's what's thrown off Barbie in the real world. But there is this initial confrontation with the teen daughter who has this stressful, teenage relationship with her mom, who gives this screed that, as Leslie says, summarizes all of the critiques of Barbies in like one minute read. I didn't love it. I wonder what did you make of that exchange, Kate?
Well, I think that character is supposed to be like the stand-in for like us, basically, like the joyless leftist.
Yeah. And she calls her a fascist.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, to me, it was a little bit just. It was a bit like too cute, to have it just be like, oh, we know what you're gonna say about this, and then like the daughter's character, I forgot the name of the character, but like her journey throughout the movie is basically to sort of get on board with, like the sort of different type of feminism of Barbieland, and to lighten up and enjoy all the pretty colors.
They put her in a dress at the end after wearing kind of grungy, androgynous clothes the whole movie.
Yeah. I think that was probably one of my. It was probably one of my least favorite points of the movie, because they kind of set her up like she was going to be this like interesting, strong character, but then they just have her kind of ironically get brainwashed.
Well, they set her up actually. When we meet the girl, we hear another classmate, before we even meet the girl, we hear another one of her classmates say, oh, that's so-and-so. She destroys people. Like, you don't want to talk to her. Be careful. She destroys people. And it's like, okay, so now I'm learning that this person indiscriminately, apparently not based on merit or whether you deserve being destroyed, it's just a mean person who tears people down. So in that context, setting her up to be the one that delivers the critique of Barbie makes her not a credible narrator.
Yeah,
so even though she's supposed to literally speak for me, like I'm the cringe leftist who has the critique of feminism or whatever, and whether Barbies can be feminist. It made a joke out of everything that she was saying. It transformed what might have been a legitimate critique into silly teen angst from someone who doesn't know what she's talking about and who overshot by a mile, calling Barbie a fascist.
Yeah.
So it felt like a joke of us. It felt like it was a parody of us and making fun of leftists and feminists, as opposed to delivering anything in the way of a real critique.
Yeah, agree.
And also they can say, well, we put your stuff in the movie. What are you complaining about? Like you get like they say it's like lampshading, I think is technically the term for it, where you build in the criticism, and like they didn't really address it. Like you said, they just like the win of the movie for the mother and daughter is like helping Barbie get a vagina. They don't really have any resolution. And like this movie, it didn't have to be about Ken. It didn't have to be about Barbie. It could have been about America Ferrera's character. Like obviously, like a woman who is depressed, she's struggling, she's a personal assistant. I mean, I do want to say she's like the only woman in the real world that we see with a job, and she's a secretary. So that seems that was a choice. Somebody did tell me that there's a woman doctor that you see.
There is.
Okay, and there's a teacher as well. There's a teacher. So like those are choices that they made of what the real world is like. And instead of this Barbie, maybe she draws a picture of Barbie and Barbie comes to life in the real world, right? That's a movie, Barbie movie, and Barbie brings all her Barbie ideals to the world. And even she's disheartened by the fact that the Barbies selling and her feminist message got lost in the shuffle or whatever. You could have a lot of the same plot points, and you could still have Barbie be a kind of underridden character like she is in this movie, and you let America Ferrera and her daughter be kind of the center of this movie, and you actually portray her workplace as a real workplace instead of like
actual sexism, and not this cartoonish version of like, oh, I'm I'm a construction man hollering at you, or I'm the Mattel board, which is comprised of all men, even though in real life, and I hate that Ben Shapiro was the one that pointed this out to me, the founder of Mattel for the first 30 years was the woman who was played by Rhea Perlman in the film. The board is comprised of 11 people, 6 of which are men and 5 of which are women. So they create, they make up fake patriarchy when there fully is real patriarchy in a way that serves to invalidate the legitimacy of real concerns that feminists have.
This is what these crazy women believe, that every boardroom is still in 2023, nothing but men. What the hell are you talking about? That's going to be the reaction. And it's and also at the end of the movie, all those guys become good guys.
Right.
For no reason. It's never expressed. They go
it's Mattel.
Yeah, because it's Mattel. They don't even give a movie reason for why because they just get what they want without really doing anything. Even though they try to kidnap Barbie, in the middle of the movie, they try to kidnap her to bring her to Barbieland, and she just goes on her own. And they go and they look at it, and they have a moment to say, "This is what it's all about. We really care about helping little girls." They literally say this, no pushback, no nothing at the end of the movie, and it's just this is what we're supposed to think of Mattel, even if they're all men, even if they're male feminists. Who have the jobs and the power in the real world that allow the Barbies to live in their little fake world.
In fact, you get the one man who says, when there's some critique of the board being all men, I think maybe by Barbie, one man says, "Well, I'm a man with no power. Does that make me a woman?" Ha 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 ha. Ha ha ha.
I mean, the end of the movie could have been a woman becoming America Ferrara, becoming the CEO of
Barbie.
Yeah,
Barbie might be qualified to do a little something about Barbie.
Yeah.
But also, by the way, speaking of America Ferrera, the whole motivating impetus of this film is that America Ferrera is having such dark suicidal thoughts that it ruins the Barbie kingdom. Is anyone going to check in on America Ferrera? Is America Ferrera okay? Does anybody care? Does the movie try to suggest, even for 1 second, why America Ferrera might be having existential angst? Is she struggling with bills? Is her relationship on the rocks? We get to see her doofy husband at the end. I had assumed that he was out of the picture, frankly.
Yes.
They were divorced, or he had passed away, or something.
That's the implication you get early on, but then he's just there, living at home, happily married, a seemingly good father, if maybe a little bit clueless and oblivious. The daughter doesn't seem mad at him. The daughter is pissed at her mom, pissed, I blame my mom for my father leaving, but the father is right there, and she's just...
There's also a weird, he's also, we should make fun of him because
he doesn't know Spanish.
He doesn't know Spanish. So the idea is he's the white guy, the dumb white father also in this diverse family.
He's a kin too. He's a kin, but why does she have a kin?
I can't even begin to get it. I can't even begin to process what they're trying to say with the casting of the father and the Duolingo stuff. I can't even begin to. But I did want to I would want to ask you about is anyone's bothered by this idea? Because it does seem like there's a parallel between America Ferrera and the Barbie with respect to them not feeling almost afraid to give them the kind of depth of character and flaws that would make them interesting people. What is actually America Ferrera's problem in life? What is actually Barbie's problem in life and their motivation? And the Ken gets all of this depth and quirks and interesting stuff because he's allowed to be flawed. He's kind of dumb. He went into the world, he saw some stuff, he misunderstood it, but he had a genuine instinct, which is that he feels like he's not living up to his potential or getting appreciated in the Barbie world, and does what he can with that. But if Barbie has to be perfect, and also America Ferrera, who gives this huge preachy speech about how women always have to be perfect, the movie, it feels like, is doing exactly that to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so often said by Barbie and other people that she is, Margot Robbie, is perfect and she is the ideal. And that is why she's so special, is because she's pretty and it's perfect and does not have cellulite. And that's never really challenged or addressed. And I don't even know if Barbie gets a speech where she says, I'm tired of being perfect. That could have been the silentness in the movie. It's I'm tired of being perfect. I want to live an authentic life. All these other Barbies get to have jobs, and I just get to be Barbie. She never really says anything like that from what I recall. Maybe towards the end, but like, man.
Yeah, and to be, the out is to be human, not to be a different kind of Barbie, which I think really does raise some negative implications for all the other Barbies. Well, what are they? Are they stupid? Are they clueless? Are they unblue-pilled? Are they living in the Matrix? Are they under the delusion that they're having a happy life, but they are not? Because is it possible to be happy as a Barbie? If it is possible to be happy as a Barbie, why wasn't stereotypical Barbie able to self-actualize in the Barbie kingdom?
My feeling is maybe this is a little strange, but it felt like the Barbies were kind of like an hive mind. Like some dark god has split itself into 100 different aspects. They all have different parts, and the stereotypical, the stereotypical Barbie didn't get anything really. She was just kind of like the baseline, and the Kens are like their little minions and servants.
She's Hugh. Barbie is Hugh. You know, the one Borg that gets like singular consciousness and sees themselves as a I as opposed to a we, and then he's messed up and he can't go back.
Yeah, but not really, because she never enunciates anything like that. Like, that is kind of the shape her story takes, but she never, like, it's never really said or mentioned, and, like, it's kind of the opposite. Like, her stuff comes externally from America Ferrera's story, and the only thing, like you said, we know about her is that she's afraid of dying, and she doesn't like that she has cellulite. Like, that is the problem that she has. She doesn't even have a sexist, mean boss, which like that she's dealing with, and she's a secretary. Like, come on.
What did you guys make of the capitalism of it all? Because there are several explicit references to capitalism, the sales of the doll. When the Kens take over, Will Ferrell is for some reason trying to set things right. One of his minions points out that, why do we care? We're making a ton of money. The Kens are flying off the shelves. Why do you need to make Barbie queen of the castle again? Were you satisfied? Like, what was even the answer to that?
He says it's because that's when he says it's because he cares about little girls.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, you know, the only, like, articulated anti-capitalist sentiment in this movie was from the little girl and her, like, when she goes off on Barbie. I think that it was, like, I think that capitalism was, like, assumed in this movie. Like, it's just like, of course this is the way, and you'd have to be like a real bummer and a little bit mentally off to think anything else, you know? Like, it just seems like it's just like, yes, of course this is capitalism. It's beautiful and bright and shiny, and it's the way it works.
Yeah.
But also, like, why bring it up?
Yeah, exactly.
The movie feels it like, you would think this movie would be like magical realism, but it's a lot more like corporate realism, because the world that exists is the world of Mattel. Like, it's just like their boardrooms, their toys, everything that anybody does in the world is directly related to the Barbie or Barbie in some way, shape, or form. And I did want to mention, I would have to rewatch. I don't know if technically you can say this movie passed the Bechdel test at least as easily as you would think, since the Barbies aren't women. So if you move all the Barbies, does this film pass the Bechdel test? Perhaps it does, but you have to look a little bit closer than just assuming that because the Barbies talk to one another, that passes the Bechdel test.
Well, I think you're doing a lot with the Barbies aren't women. I mean, come on.
They say explicitly that Barbie is not a woman. At some point, somebody asks, I asked a question similar to, well, do you want to become a real woman or something to that effect at the end?
That's fine. But even so, I mean, I think America Ferrera and her daughter have conversations.
Yeah, they talk, for sure.
Her daughter and her friends have a conversation, like, with Barbie. I mean, but it's like the three of them with Barbie in the school cafeteria. The Barbie and, well, you're not counting Barbie, but Barbie and Ruth, the founder of Barbie, Rhea Perlman's character, which I want to ask you about before we wrap, because this to me, this movie was largely a fun romp, right? Like, if we just divorce ourselves from the politics and we suck out all the cringy, heavy-handed discussions of the patriarchy, And for me, also cut out the magical speech given by America Ferrera about how hard it is to be a woman, which is what ultimately snaps all the Barbies back into being Barbies and out from under the Ken spell. If you get rid of all of that, the rest of the runtime is like fun and the outfits are good and it's fun. Okay. Then we get to the end where the movie seems to want to justify itself through the introduction of this character of the founder of Barbie, who died in 2002, who stopped being the CEO after 30 years because of some tax evasion issues for which she was substantively liable, but who is imagined as a ghost. They explicitly refer to as a ghost at some point in the movie, who has an office that looks like a 1950s kitchen within the Mattel skyscraper.
Not an office. She works. It's literally a kitchen.
It's literally a kitchen. But I think Will Ferrell refers to her as having an office on the 11th floor or whatever in the building. And she comes to Barbie at the end of the movie and like a white background like dream sequence, and holds her hand and says basically, you can be whatever you want to be. I can't tell you what to do. You don't need permission from me, even though I literally made you. Okay, you're going to self-actualize. You don't need permission from me. What do you actually want? And Barbie is forced to answer this question, which she's been ducking for the last 10 minutes in our conversations with Ken. And we are treated to a video montage of Vaseline-lensed, foggy, idyllic images of mothers and daughters, which apparently was collected from the home videos of cast and crew members. And after watching, Ruth, the founder of Barbie, says, I'm going to show you what the real world is like, and then you can make an informed decision. And then she gets this montage of mothers and daughters, because that's what the real world is like. And then she makes the final decision to go ahead and be in the real world. What was this doing, Kate?
I thought that this was going to be, to me, when they were like, I'm going to show you what the real world is like, I thought, honestly, I was like, oh, they're going to show someone dying right now.
Yeah, it's going to be Oppenheimer.
Yeah, or just, someone having, in the hospital or something, because the whole movie sort of sets up this kind of, existential question. Yes. That, there's these characters that lack meaning and, the reckoning with mortality. And I thought that it was going to be this thing of, human life, it does end. There is mortality and suffering, but ultimately, it's love and connection that makes the meaning, despite the fact that we all die. But it literally just shows people hanging out. So that was kind of
motherhood specifically. Yeah. Not just people hanging out, but for a movie that's trying to resist the idea that women have to follow certain gender roles, that opens with this Stanley Kubrick sequence from 2001 Space Odyssey, but it's the girls bashing their baby dolls into the ground and saying they don't have to have dolls that put them in the mother role. They can have dolls that put them in other roles. To end it with a montage of mothers and daughters as an example of what the real world is. And then for her to choose that, and then to go to her gynecologist at the end, what is she signing up for IVF? What's happening? What is happening? What are we supposed to take away from what Barbie is actually choosing at the end of this film?
Yeah, that could have been a montage of, say, I don't know, where real women with the jobs that the Barbies have, like world leaders, astronauts, all these different things, but they don't put that in the montage. It's just mothers and daughters, and it's a strange thing. And the opening montage where before, girls only played with baby dolls and they only gave them the goal to be women until Barbie came along. Not really true, but also the original Barbie originally was not quite a sex doll, but a gag gift for men. That's why she's so tall and leggy and had
Is that
big
true?
boobs. Yes.
Wait, so Ruth, I need to figure out her name.
Well, yeah,
Ruth Handler, I think, right?
Ruth Handler, yeah.
She didn't I haven't looked up the Ruth thing, but if you look up the original, it's German. It's a German doll.
Oh, the pre Barbie.
Yeah, pre-Barbie, which is like the basis for it. It's like it looks just like Barbie.
Oh
like,
yeah, German toy doll called Build Lily.
Yes, build it. Yes, and it was a gift.
Yeah.
It was a gift like guys would give to each other as like a joke or something.
Interesting. Yeah, Yeah, I'm like looking at the Wikipedia now, and yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like Ben Shapiro. I feel like we just spent an hour ragging on this movie, which I was like fully prepared to like. Obviously, Ben Shapiro and them, they're mad at the movie because they feel like they don't like feminism, like period.
There's
they don't
women
feel like it was poorly executed. Yeah,
There's women in it. That's why they don't like it.
Poorly executed feminism. They don't like the feminism to begin with, even though I think you're right, Leslie, that it was a kind of a conservative movie. There's a very conservative reading of this movie, including that, frankly, I was rooting for Ken. Ken when I saw the Ben Shapiro's of the world saying, "Oh, Ken is being treated meanly by Margot Robbie, by Barbie," I thought for sure they were exaggerating. I thought for sure they just didn't get it, and all of the responses were like they just don't get it. But like there's this version of feminism that's not, I would argue, feminism, but there's this version of female empowerment that some people do, where it's like there's a stereotype that women diminish themselves and they apologize too much and they won't own their accomplishments. And in response to that, they will write women as being narcissistic.
Yeah.
So, for example, there's a scene where Margot Robbie sees an old woman at a bus stop on her first time in the real world. And it's clear that she's mesmerized by her because there's no older people in Barbieland. And she's, got a wrinkled face and she's an older woman. And Barbie says, "You're so beautiful." And the woman goes, "I know." And it's like there's a big gap between saying, "Oh, no, not me, I'm an ugly old frau," and saying, "Thank you, sweetie."
Yeah.
She could just say thank you. Like that's what a polite, normal person says. That has nothing to do with gender. Just accept the compliment and say thank you.
Yeah.
But they put her in the position. So with Ken, it's like they couldn't just have her be not that interested. Like she's allowed to be not that interested in Ken. I mean, it's a little cruel to design a world where Ken is very, very interested in Barbie and Barbie doesn't reciprocate. Like, but that's, I guess, a Mattel problem, not Barbie's problem per se. But they have her be patronizing and dismissive in a way that I think clouds the message somewhat.
Yeah.
She doesn't even want to be friends with Ken.
Yeah. She does apologize to him in the end for making every night girls' night. That was one of the things that I feel like up front I was supposed to be like, oh yeah, like I was supposed to be on the side of like girls' night, but I was like, no, if like my partner literally never wanted to hang out with me, I would be sad about that, of course. So like that's human. So I don't know, but I did think it was kind of something that she was like, yeah, I can see why that hurt your feelings, but it was very one-dimensional.
Yeah, and like the climax of the movie is like Ken has staged like a massive revolt and all this stuff, and Barbie was kind of mean to him, and the apology we remember is the Barbie apology. Like that's the women apology, the women like plastic thing apologizing.
Yeah. Well, look, this sounds so random, but I promise you, watch this movie back to back with Legally Blonde, and the problems with the Barbie movie will become incredibly apparent. Legally Blonde is a better Barbie movie than Barbie. Because Legally Blonde goes into the world and she doesn't change. I mean, she grows and improves, but she also holds on to her core identity and changes other people around her to be more like her. And the Legally Blonde doesn't try to answer questions about whether it's good or bad to wear pink or good or bad to be blonde or get your nails done regularly or like a bikini. It doesn't care. Those things are treated as neutral. What Legally Blonde cares about and why you're supposed to like Elle Woods is because she's supportive of her friends. She's generous with her time. She's hardworking. She keeps her promises. She's loyal to her sorority sister who's on trial. She's a good person. She declines to say negative things about the appearance of her boyfriend's new girlfriend. They end up having a friendship at the end of the movie because she's been genuinely kind and fair to her throughout. It's a movie where women support women across class lines. She befriends her nail tech and helps her get with a UPS guy, hashtag solidarity. Like, that is the kind of movie Legally Blonde is, because it doesn't feel like it needs to do discourse about who Elle Woods is. But what it does, what's subversive about it, it says that while you might think that the most important thing about Elle Woods is that she's pink, the most important thing about Elle Woods is that she's actually a hardworking, smart, kind person. And isn't it good? Whatever you think about anything else about her, isn't it good to be a hardworking, smart, kind person? Is anyone in the Barbie movie hardworking, smart, kind, or have any kind of value that you would want to emulate?
I think America Ferrera is supposed to be the closest to it, but the character is written pretty flatly.
All we know about her is that she's a mother.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Yeah.
She doesn't have, like I said, I would mention the Bechdel test because, like, she doesn't have female friends. There's not another woman that she talks to at the office. There's no real, like, space for, like, real adult women and their lives in this movie, except for the teenage daughters and motherhood.
Yeah.
Well, all right, let's wrap this up. Kate, how would you rate this movie out of 10, and should people go see it?
I think I would give it a 6.5, and yeah, I would see it because it's fun. Also, I have to be honest, I did take a tiny bit of mushrooms before I saw this movie, which enhanced the experience for me a little bit. So I don't know, maybe I'm being more generous with the review because of that. Yeah.
It's a psilocybin 6. Okay.
Psilocybin 6.5.
Psilocybin 6, yeah. Leslie, what about you?
I give it a 6. And I mean, there's amusing parts to it. There's funny parts to it. Like, there's some good stuff in it. Unfortunately, it mostly revolves around Ken for some reason. But yeah, it's a movie that if you're interested in it, I would watch it on, like, when it comes to VOD or streaming, perhaps. I don't know if you need to rush and see it at theaters. Plus, they've made all their money anyway, so they're fine. Don't go out risking getting COVID or long COVID to see this. They already got their money.
Yeah, I will say the drive-through experience is both safe and delightful. Leslie, how are you doing? I think that a lot of our listeners checked in to the live stream that Katie Halper did in support of you. I know you've been struggling with long COVID. How can people find you, find your work, support you, and all that good stuff right now? Yeah,
just check me out. I host a podcast called Struggle Session. I have to slow it down a little bit, but we got an episode coming up very shortly where we talk about Mission and the latest Mission Impossible. And it's a good episode. I'm looking forward to it. We also talk about the Flash movie, which is, we have a very fun discussion about a very, very bad movie, and it also ties into everything that's going on with the strike in Hollywood. We've been talking about it on Struggle Session for a while, that these executives don't know what they're doing. They've basically destroyed their own industry in all these chasing big tech that doesn't make money itself. So it's just check out Struggle Session if you want to hear more about that. Patreon.com/Struggle Session or sesh.show to subscribe. Find me at Leslie Lee II on Twitter or X for now, or on Threads actually, the Leslie Lee III on Threads.
Okay, terrific, Leslie. And Kate, where can we find you? I mean, if you don't know, if you have only listened to Kate Willet in a podcast context, you are doing yourself a disservice. She's so hilarious. Do you have any new specials out? What's going on with you? Where can people find you around being a comedian and a podcast person?
So I am on, I would say the best place is Instagram, kate.willet. And I do have a new special coming out soon. I don't know the release date. Like, things are a little complicated with the strike and stuff, but it'll be out. It's in the can. It's edited. Let's see what happens. And for now, I have a ton of stand up on the internet, and I put it on Instagram, and I'm performing live a lot. So I'll probably be coming to your city. Follow me there. And on my podcast, Reply Guys. I have a podcast where it's like a leftist feminist podcast. Lately, we've been doing a lot of stuff about, like, housing and urban planning and stuff, which has been really interesting to me. So check it out.
Please do support both of these wonderful voices. It's such a thrill for me to be able to bring you together to talk about the Barbie movie. Guys, I'm sure you'll let me know what you think in the comments. As you are aware, I'm sure you can get another episode of Bad Faith Podcast every Monday by subscribing at patreon.com/badfaithpodcast for $5 a month. You get 4 additional episodes every month. And that includes full video content as well. Thank you for listening. If you're watching this, don't forget to like and subscribe and all of those things. Thanks for your support. Take care of yourselves. And as always, keep the faith.
Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Just a reminder that this is a podcast. You can catch an extra premium episode every Monday for $5 a month at patreon.com/badfaithpodcast. That's patreon.com/badfaithpodcast for $5 a month, an extra episode every week. Additionally, please do consider liking this video, subscribing to this channel. It helps us out. It helps independent media beat the algorithm. We appreciate you. And as always, keep the faith.